Welcome to the California Sun Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Schechtman. In a warehouse off Van Ness Avenue in San Francisco, something both ancient and unprecedented is taking shape. The amphitheater, the Coliseum, the cage match, humanity's oldest form of public spectacle is being reborn in silicon and steel. But this time, the combatants don't bleed. My guest today, Ashlee Vance, has spent 2 decades documenting the future as it arrives. From his best-selling biography of Elon Musk to his Emmy-nominated travels around the globe chasing the cutting edge. His latest dispatch from the frontier comes from an unlikely place. The underground parking garages of downtown San Francisco, where a new movement is building what they believe will be the next UFC. 4 humanoid robots hang from gantries in a no-frill warehouse space. They're outfitted with armor, boxing gloves, and swords. They have backstories. One is named Derek, and his narrative is that he doesn't want to fight, but must fight to earn his freedom. His human creator, a VR entrepreneur named Six Live, chose to invest in these robots rather than buy a house. And the sport they're building would mix flavors from mixed martial arts, pro wrestling, the tech world, and anime. The story Ashlee tells is layered with paradox. America provides the showmanship and cultural framing, while China manufactures every actuator and joint. The most viral moment wasn't a spectacular knockout, but a malfunction. Derek hanging from his gantry, feet not touching the ground, losing his stability sensors, and trashing wildly as Liv backed away in genuine fear. At the underground fight clubs, robots overheat and bumble between moments of ferocity. During the intermissions, humans chase each other with tasers while fighters prep their bots for the next round. The technology isn't ready, but the appetite is. And the question before us isn't whether robot fighting will happen. It's already happening. But what it means. What does it say about us that we're building machines that look like us and immediately teaching them to hurt each other? That we're creating a combat sport where, as Liv puts it, Gen Z doesn't want to get punched in the face anymore. Are we witnessing the birth of the first combat sport with true parity, where men, women, children, and the elderly can compete on equal terms? Or are we just building expensive toys for tech workers who can't afford houses? Ashlee Vance joins me to discuss his piece for his Core Memory Substack entitled Inside San Francisco's Robot Fight Club. Ashlee Vance, welcome to the California Sun Podcast.
Thank you so much. That was incredible. I wish I had written that.
Well, you did. Thank you so much. I want to begin by talking, first of all, when you walked into this warehouse for the first time, give us a sense of what that was like.
It was strange. I mean, over the last couple of months, like you mentioned, there's been this, I just started to hear about this kind of budding movement of sorts with these robot fights and didn't know what to expect. The first time I went in, and then it was everything I hoped and more. The robots are strange. You talked about the gantry. They're big. I mean, some of the robots are around, I would say, 4 feet tall, but then some are close to 6 foot tall. I mean, they're no joke. And when they're moving around, you can feel the vibration in the floor when they walk, and when they hit, it's all quite dramatic. And then the people who are working on this are these larger than life characters. You mentioned Six Live. He's this VR legend of sorts, but he really is. He's trying to embody becoming the next Dana White, the guy who runs UFC and is full of theatrics, and so it had everything. It had technology, drama, and also this underground early days of a tech movement type feel to it.
How much of the reaction to this, your reaction and I guess the reaction of all of us, is shaped by our preconceptions about what this is like from having seen things like battles among robots in Terminator and so many other movies?
Yeah, I mean, there's this quite, as I've dug into the story, I did not know about this movie before, but there's a movie called Real Steel where Hugh Jackman is in it, and he does something very similar. I mean, he's controlling this robot off from the side of the ring, and as the movie progresses, the human and the robot make this deeper connection where he's able to control it even better. And so yes, I mean, some of this is things we've seen coming to life, I think it's sort of this profound moment. I think we've all been the world has been hearing about AI so much for the last 3, 4, 5 years, and most of that has been obviously through ChatGPT and these chatbots and this language-based technology. And for me, this what was clear is this physical manifestation of this AI technology, and so that really gets us to this next sci-fi type level, I think, where you we see this embodiment of this technology. And so yes, I mean it harkens back to all these movies and books that we've read for decades, except that it feels a lot more real all of a sudden.
Seeing the robots fighting each other is certainly one part of this. But talk about what you see in terms of the visceral sense of the people that are controlling the robots and how they engage in the fight.
Well, it's not just the people controlling the robots. What really caught my attention was I saw some posts on X. There's another, so there's already rival groups in San Francisco. There's three rival robot fighting leagues at this point. And the very first event, I want to say it took place around 3 months ago now, and it was by a group called UFB, Ultimate Fighting Bots. And I caught a video of this on X on Twitter, and it was the crowd that struck me, because there's a cage where it's just like a UFC fight. The robots fight inside of this steel cage, and the people were just mashed up against the walls of the cage, and they were rabid and they were screaming. And like you said in your intro, I mean, some of this is farcical. Like there's times when the robots are impressive and really hit each other, and then there's times when they're wandering around, struggling to hit anything. They overheat. The smaller ones are a bit goofy, but yet when they were fighting and they were doing their thing, I mean, the people. It looked like a boxing match or a UFC fight, and there was this palpable energy, and that's what really struck me, was that we've had robot fights in the past. Things like people might have seen the BattleBot competitions, where it was these little contraptions that get built that have saws and they can flip you over and things like that. And people get excited, but I think just having this humanoid form factor really takes people to combat sports and gins up all of that same energy for these things.
The other part of it is, as you point out in the story, is that this is really the beginnings of it. That as these things become more adept at what they're doing, it's going to become more vicious. I mean, as the robots fail less, there are going to be more horrible things that go on.
Yeah, I mean, and this is another thing that just stood out at me. As I was mentioning, I mean, when you're standing next to a 6 foot tall robot that it actually could kill you if it swung at you and hit you in the right way. I mean, they hit really hard, so there is this I mean, that part is no joke. And what's become clear to me, I think robotics, it's one of those fields that people get excited about, and then it always seems to let us down in terms of how far the technology comes. I mean, obviously we've had robots for decades in various forms, but they remain limited even today. So there's about 5 or 6 companies in the United States making humanoid robots. There's about 15 in China, and the biggest thing they could do about a year ago, the big accomplishment, was to fold laundry. That's still one of the hardest tasks that all these companies try to prove that they can do. But even in the time that I've been reporting this story over the last 3 months, these fighting robots have improved dramatically. I mean, there's videos coming out of China now of the robots getting knocked down and they just flip right back up, and even the ones that I get to try out here in San Francisco, they're getting much harder to push down. The moves are getting much more sophisticated, and so this is progressing rapidly.
And one of the things that's progressing is beyond just the VR aspect of these robots fighting, but when you incorporate AI into it, as that advances, it creates a lot of other fears.
Yeah, I mean, there's this fascinating intersection of VR, AI, and the robotics itself. VR is a field that it's had some successes, but I don't think has ever lived up to its hype. There's a part here where I see these pilots, the people controlling the robots, put on these VR helmets. They have these controllers in their hand, and I've tried it. And for me, it's like, oh, this is what VR technology was meant for. And then on the AI side, they are literally showing these robots hours and hours and hours of videos of fighters so that the robots can learn just like the language models learn from reading Reddit posts and books and all the things we've produced over centuries. These robots are learning from watching fights, and the moves are getting much more sophisticated. And then on the last part of your point, I mean, this raises many, many, many questions. You know, what happens when one of these things go wrong? There's one person who's heavily involved in these fights. I mean, he's doing this because he wants the robots to have a place in the workforce and to be able to earn a living, and he envisions these fighters fighting like human fighters do to earn a wage and go about their place in the world. And so it's this again, it really is this. I think when you have this embodiment of the AI and this humanoid aspect to it, it starts to raise a lot of well, it puts a fine point on a lot of AI questions that we've been thinking about for a long time.
It does. And you think about the idea of a VR operated robot fighting against an AI robot. It's like the ultimate manifestation of what we saw in the earliest days of computers with a person playing chess against a computer.
Yeah, there's that element. You know, there's the nation state element to all this. You could easily see China putting its best AI fighter up against the United States' best AI fighter, and that being some kind of barometer on possibly, you know, where our military technology stands and how these types, you know, it's not hard to extrapolate where these types of humanoids could be used. And so yes, you know, I really think it propels a lot of these questions forward. I do think this China US aspect of this is fascinating because the US really has dominated technology obviously for decades now, and it is clear enough to me. You've got companies like Elon Musk's Tesla. They have an Optimus robot. You know, they're pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into that. You've got a couple other startups in the U.S. who also have raised hundreds of millions of dollars, but the Chinese companies are moving much faster. All the underlying technology of these robots, the motors, the actuators, the things that actually make them move, are produced and advanced in China. China has more robotics startups, and it is clear that they are leading the cutting edge of this in a way. You know, I cover the technology industry as deep as anyone, especially the frontier of it. I have not seen the US get outpaced like this in a very long time, if ever.
To what extent are the Chinese engaging in the same kind of experiments with these robots fighting each other?
They're doing a lot. I mean, it was about a month ago, I want to say, they had this robotics Olympics, and again, it's kind of like you talked about in your introduction. The U.S. has this showmanship, this entertainment aspect that we do very well. The robot Olympics that China held was much more reserved. It was the robots sprinting when they were fighting. It looked more like a traditional Olympic style boxing match without all the rabid fans, you know, dangling from the ring and drinking and doing all that. And so China has been pushing it forward, and they keep putting up one video after another. The major company is called Unitree, but it has many competitors. But they're showing absolutely they are training the robots to do these fighting moves, and they're trying to advance the fighting moves forward. It does not seem yet like China really wants to lean into the entertainment part of this. But you know, who knows if that changes.
It is interesting, though, because China is arguably more advanced in terms of using the robotics for manufacturing. I mean, places like BYD are far ahead of some of the things happening in the U.S.
Absolutely. I mean, the extra fascinating to me, because I would say culturally, historically, I think Japan and the US, I would argue, have had the most sort of robotics affinity. The stories wound into their culture where it spans from the factory to entertainment. China just doesn't have that in their DNA historically, but obviously it's rising very quickly thanks to their industrial economy. And they have the big advantage is the competition. They have 12 to 15 startups doing this technology who are all viciously competing with each other on the technology itself to make it lower cost, to make it work better, and then and they not to like do a trope, but they copy each other. I mean, this is how China took over the drone industry as well. It was first they dominated the US companies, but then it was this internal competition in China where people they copy each other, they undercut each other on price that really pushes this technology forward so quickly, and we're definitely seeing that here.
Then, of course, the underlying question about all of this is what use this all might be to the U.S. military at some point.
Yeah, I mean this is where the stakes get even higher because if you go out on what we're talking about and you imagine a world, it looks like Star Wars, right? The rise of the clone army or something like that. I mean, that is literally what it seems like China is building. The US has a major problem. I suspect we'll be able to keep up in terms of the technology. We have tons of AI experts and immense engineering powers. Where I think the U.S. military is probably concerned, or at least thinking about this, is just the volume of production. There is the U.S. simply would have no chance of keeping up. If China wanted to make 1 million of these this year, they probably could, and the U.S. would be lucky to make a few thousand. And so if the U.S. military really wants it does see this as the future and wants to take this seriously, the country has a lot of things it needs to address, even some of just the core parts, the motors, the electric motors that make the arms and legs and everything move are almost exclusively made in China today.
Talk a little bit about the way this is spreading, even here in the Bay Area, that suddenly it's moved from a single warehouse, a single event space, to competitions that are taking place all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, so that one group, the UFB, that sort of started this, they keep doing now event after event in this Frontier Tower. It's a building off of Market Street, and they have this garage, and they've been putting on these events. I went to one last weekend. It was Cal versus Stanford. They tied. I think I felt like Stanford was winning, but they called it a tie. And then Six Live, our main character, his company is called REK, and they just had a huge event at the Temple nightclub in San Francisco where about 2,000 people showed up. I think it was the most people that had ever been to the nightclub before. This guy, Justin Kahn, who started the Twitch streaming service, was one of the fighters versus an MMA fighter. And then just last weekend, there was another underground group that sprung up where they have the robots with tasers taped to their hands, and they're adding weapons now onto all of this, and that was another sort of underground fight. I having had a chance to play with the robots, one thing stood out to me that's clear. I think there's these bachelor parties where people will go do axe throwing or go to a bar or something like that. I am sure we're going to have bars where I don't mean to make this exclusive to men. I'm sure men and women will love to do this, but I could see a bachelor party where 12 guys get together and beat each other up with robots. I mean, that was what was running through my head. So I think we'll start to see little pockets of these things as these other groups try to make more and more spectacular events around this. The technology does need to, if this is really going to go mainstream, I would say the technology still has a ways to go to make that possible.
And certainly the entertainment side of it has to grow as a result of this. I mean, there are too many people in the Dana White world, in the Area Manual world, that have to be looking at this and thinking there's a lot of money to be made here.
Well, interestingly, Dana White made a trip to China just after those robotic Olympics. I know for a fact that he met with some of the people who are promoting these early events and with the robotics companies themselves. And so I'm sure he sees some element of that. I do think it's fascinating idea that you could have could have the countries fighting each other. You could have, as you mentioned before, you could have a teenager going up against a 50 or a 60-year-old, a 15-year-old woman going up against an old man, and really, I think this opens up this avenue where you've got the robot character, and then you've got the pilot character. And so there's sort of these two opportunities to give each of these things a persona and to kind of merge the personas and have these asymmetric type fights that we've never seen in another sport before.
To what extent is there an element of fear in watching this? You get the sense that even Six Live is afraid at a certain point.
I mean, it is when you see those big ones, and I think I anthropomorphize it a little bit, but you're looking at the robot and it's looking at you face to face, but you don't know what's going on in its head, and you're just trusting the entire. I mean, I stand up close to them just while we're talking or I'm doing reporting on the story, and you just have to trust that it's not going to malfunction or just decide to swing and hit you. I mean, they swing harder than a human would. And so it is strange to be next to something where you just don't know what's running through its artificial brain, and you just obviously don't know if it's early days with this stuff, if it's just going to go haywire and club you. And then when they're in the ring, I mean, you can feel it. You feel that vibration. You feel it when they hit each other. Obviously, they're in a ring, so it doesn't seem too frightening in the moment. But as I'm sitting there watching these things, my mind, I mean, I hate to say it, but something will go wrong at some point in the early days of this. That seems clear enough to me.
And at a certain point, the entertainment value has to become, at least for some, a bit disturbing as you see these things fighting, as heads get crushed, as you see limbs being torn off, real violence.
Well, and that is happening. That is happening. I've seen limbs get knocked off. At the moment, it feels almost comical just because the limb gets knocked off and somebody walks into the ring and picks it up and just walks out. So it's like brutal, but not in the sense of when you see a human boxer really getting pounded, and obviously you have a lot of emotions around that. But undoubtedly, if AI progresses in the way many people think it does, I'm like, oh, of course this is what humans do. The first thing we do is have these robots hit each other, and then what do we do when the robots light up and they're really upset that this was the first thing we had them do was to beat each other up? When your brain starts extrapolating out to these robots having a bit more personality and something perhaps approaching consciousness. It seems like maybe this isn't the best thing for us to do if we're trying to curry favor with this intelligence over time.
The other part is the degree to which, in time, they become even more human-like in the way they look.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like a little farcical today because we put these costumes on them. They clearly look like robots as opposed to humans. Six already wants to do samurais in traditional costume going up against British knights and things like that. But I think, yes, once you start putting, there's people who I've covered who make very human-like robots with plastic faces, textured faces and hair and all that. And some of them are quite realistic. They all seem to suffer for the moment from what we call the uncanny valley, where it looks like a human but obviously isn't, and it makes you uncomfortable. I think if we get to the point where they are looking very much like a human, your brain snaps a little bit into immediately putting all these human emotions and feelings onto these things. And so I suspect people would have to grapple with that a bit. Yeah, of course.
I mean, it's one thing to see it C-3PO, it's another the Terminator.
Yeah, and the more human these become, the stranger it gets. I would hope that the opportunity here is to lean more into the fantasy realm, but if this really took off, you have to imagine people would try anything and everything they could.
Do you hear any talk ever about regulating this within states or municipalities or anything else?
Not yet. I was asking the I was asking the people doing the fights in San Francisco if the city officials had ever popped by or anything like that. I assume that for obvious reasons, San Francisco's become the epicenter of the early days of this. I assume people are aware that it's happening. I think because I thought they would stop by just to kind of like make sure it's safe and things like that. At the moment, the betting around this, at least as far as I'm aware, has been kind of fake. It was like pretend betting at a couple of things with fake money and a fake betting booth. I don't know if people are doing things online on the side. I don't think it's quite reached the critical mass or attention enough for the regulators to pay attention, but I would guess that at the second there is actual betting, any kind of alcohol involved in these things, that somebody would start paying attention.
One thing that we've learned from AI in general over the past 3 years is how fast all of this progresses.
Yeah, I mean this has been the issue with robotics, is that you get excited and then it lets you down. I don't know if people. Well, I pay attention to all this stuff probably more than most. It's, we had this huge moment with the language models where clearly companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, Google poured literally more than $1 trillion into the data centers and technology needed to advance those systems. Something similar has been happening over the last 18 months, which is those same companies, along with companies like NVIDIA, Tesla, have pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into robotics. There's a belief that you can take that underlying language, that LLM technology that powers ChatGPT and similar systems, and infuse that into robotics and really push the field forward. We've seen examples of this. People build these humanoid robots, and now they tell it. They put a bunch of objects on a table, and without the robot having any prior knowledge, they say, go pick up the Coke can. And because it has these language models inside of it, the robot can look at all those objects and determine which one is the Coke can out of all of those. And so they're getting this knowledge of the real world quite quickly. The hands remain a problem. Those electric motors that we talked about tend to overheat. The robot has to use all of this energy just to stand up and balance all the time. And so those are issues that might not make this progress quite as quickly, but robotics has become definitely in the investing community the next big thing in AI, and money has poured into this field.
Perhaps the final battle between ChatGPT and Claude will be in the form of robots.
Well, I see people on X pushing for this. They want to see Elon take his Tesla, his Optimus bot, and go out and either fight some of the other American startups or a Chinese startup, and I mean we could settle some scores. There was, I don't know if you remember, sort of tragically, Elon and Mark Zuckerberg were talking about having a MMA fight a couple of years ago. I mean, we could settle some of these tech scores now in the ring, I think, instead of with humans.
Ashlee Vance, his Substack is Core Memory. The story is Inside San Francisco's Robot Fight Club. Ashlee, I thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you. That was fun. Thank you.
And thank you for listening and joining us here on the California Sun podcast. I hope you'll join us next week. I'm Jeff Schechtman. If you like this podcast, please feel free to share and help others find it by rating and reviewing it on iTunes, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.